Today I wanted to revisit the idea that Western cultures are based on Christian values, and to do this, I'm going to respond to a video by the YouTuber BASSFZz. I still don't know how to pronounce that. Fortunately, he also goes by the name Zers. Now, his video is actually a response to another video by RationalityRules, so we're going 3 layers deep here, but hopefully it'll be clear who's talking to who. However, before we get started, I'd like to lay out a few general points to consider. First is that many, if not most values we consider to be Western, were not the original ideas of Christianity, or are simply not in the Bible at all. Ideas like democracy, holding your leaders accountable, freedom of speech, these pillars of the West, simply have nothing to do with Christianity or the Bible. And for those Western values that are in the Bible, I might surprise my viewers by agreeing that, yeah, these Western values are technically Christian values, but only in the same sense that Western values are also Venaloid values. These statements are technically true in the sense that A equals B and therefore B equals A, but saying that Western values are Christian values seems to imply causation. It implies that Western values arose from, or were originally expressed as, Christian values. Anyway, now that we've laid the groundwork, let's get into the video response.
But in the few cases in which an argument is actually given, it tends to be in reference to morality, which in effect is the assertion that Western morality is based on the assumption that the Abrahamic God exists.
Well, that's not said correctly. What's more accurate is to say that Western morality is based on Christian values. And that's totally different from the assumption that a Christian God exists, because the idea that our morality is functionally a part of the teachings of Jesus Christ exists independent of whether or not there is or isn't a God.
Okay, so the argument is that Western values aren't predicated on the idea of God, just the ideas of Christianity. Now, I would agree that these ideas are technically separable, but hardly anyone actually does this. The vast majority of the people who argue that Western values are Christian values also happen to believe in God, and they usually argue that God is the philosophical foundation of Western morality. So, while I can agree that belief in God is not technically necessary for a person to act out Christian values, people like Jordan Peterson, Dennis Prager, and Ben Shapiro seem to be saying that it is. In fact, Zers, right after you make this argument, you go on to show clips from RationalityRules video where Jordan Peterson and Dennis Prager both clearly say that Western morality is based on God. Not on the teachings of Jesus, but on God.
Judeo-Christian values are predicated on the existence of a God of morality. The entire Western world, what we call Western civilization, is based on this understanding.
I'm arguing that the ethic that drives our culture is predicated on the idea of God.
You've just provided evidence against your own argument moments after making it.
Now, the first thing to be said about most of those who make this assertion is that they are utterly ignoring history before Judaism, and in doing so, they're just expecting us to assume that before its inception, people somehow didn't know that it's wrong to kill, exploit, and steal.
Well, you see, my friend, you say that people who assert this are ignoring history, but what you're actually doing is arguing against something that they're not claiming. You see the point? They're not arguing that morality started with Christianity. They're not saying that morality started with Judaism. What they're saying is that the nations that we live, Western nations, in particular America, and I can speak more from an American perspective because, newsflash, I am American, are based and predicated on judeo-Christian type values. It doesn't mean that they're the first type of morality that ever existed ever. No. But what it means is that when it comes specifically to what they're talking about, America, since you've mostly only shown Americans or Canadians actually in your video saying that, it really doesn't matter if there was anything that happened prior to Judaism and prior to Christianity.
Okay, so according to you, the argument was never that Christianity invented moral values like not killing or not stealing. The argument is that these are Christian-type values, and that Western societies also happen to be based on these same values.
What they're saying is that the nations that we live, Western nations, are based and predicated on judeo-Christian type values.
If that's really the argument, well then, so what? What does that prove? Are we supposed to be amazed that some of the most common human values, seen all over the world and throughout history, were adopted by not one, but two ideological frameworks? Again, what would this prove? If this is what you mean when you say that Western values are actually Christian values, then you should be just as comfortable saying Christian values are actually Western values, right? But that doesn't have the same undertone of causation, does it? It doesn't make it sound like Christianity is the foundation of Western culture, does it? In my experience, many Christians really do believe, and promote the idea, that Christianity itself is the foundation of Western cultures, not simply that these values are common to both frameworks, or that these are just Christian-type values. I mean, heck, I could just as easily argue that Western nations are based on Venaloid-type values. Well, am I wrong? My values include not stealing, not lying, and not killing, and those same values are the basis of Western societies, right? So you see, your values are actually Venaloid values. Trademark. Now, you could argue that Christianity simply preserved these values through to the modern era, but I have yet to hear a compelling historical argument for how this actually happened, and which values specifically would not have survived had Christianity not come along.
They're just expecting us to assume that before its inception, people somehow didn't know that it's wrong to kill, exploit, and steal. That before the Ten Commandments, life was nasty, brutish, and short.
Yeah, but see, the interesting thing here is that's true. In fact, life was like that after the Ten Commandments. So the introduction of morality or laws and guidelines didn't make the world a better place immediately. It took a long time in order to make the world, at least relatively safe. And even then, it didn't really stop people from killing other people. It just vastly reduced the amount of times that it happens. But life was brutish, and people did steal from each other, and people did kill each other, and people did rape. That's why they had to create a moral law and guides and punishments for it, because people did do that, and people did it after these laws were established. They did. I mean, shit, people are still doing it now, actually.
Okay, so we agree. Christianity didn't really do anything unique in terms of defining or enforcing these values. Good to know. I feel like I need to ask my rhetorical question yet again. So what? What are you actually trying to argue by your statement that Western values are Christian-type values?
Evidence shows that official laws against murder and theft date back at least 4,400 years to Lagash, Mesopotamia, which of course is 600 years before the birth of Judaism, and that official laws abolishing slavery only date back 200 years, which of course is 3,600 years after Judaism.
Now, it might be because I have a small Negro brain and an IQ under 85. But I truly do not understand the point of which you bringing up slavery here. No, seriously, I don't really understand why you brought up slavery here. It seems largely irrelevant. And it also doesn't even seem like a good comparison to the fact that you brought up murder and theft first.
Yeah, I do kind of have to agree with you here, Zers. It is a bit confusing the way Rationality Rules first talks about something condemned in the Bible, which other cultures also condemned, and then talks about something the Bible supports, but which modern Western cultures now condemn. This is a confusing juxtaposition of ideas, but I think his points are discernible based on the context previously given. On the topic of murder, it should be clear that Christianity did not invent the idea that murder is wrong. Hence, this is not an idea that Christianity is responsible for creating, and hence, this pillar of Western culture, and indeed of nearly all cultures, is not a Christian idea any more than it is a Venaloid idea. On the topic of slavery, the argument is that, despite Christians' modern insistence that the Bible is anti-slavery, good luck proving that, slavery wasn't actually banned until fairly recently, which speaks to the irrelevance of Christianity on this aspect of modern Western cultures.
I don't really understand why you brought up slavery here. It seems largely irrelevant. And it also doesn't even seem like a good comparison to the fact that you brought up murder and theft first. I don't really see its relevance, but that being said, showing me the fact that laws like this existed prior to Christianity is not a counter-argument to Western civilization's morality is based on Christianity.
Whoa, hold on. A minute ago, you said that Western societies are based on Christian-type values, and that it doesn't matter if these same values existed before Christianity because they're still Christian-type values. And yes, technically that's true. But now you're saying that Western civilization's morality is based on Christianity. Not Christian-type values, but Christianity itself. Care to explain this?
Showing me the fact that laws like this existed prior to Christianity is not a counter-argument to Western civilization's morality is based on Christianity. In fact, this example doesn't even address that fact. Unless you can find some connection between America and the laws of Mesopotamia, it really doesn't matter if you can find a lot of similar laws prior to then.
Ooh, some connection between modern people in the West and the ancient people of Mesopotamia. Oh, I don't know, maybe the fact that Mesopotamia and similar cultures are the ancestors of us and our cultures? You're acting as if they left no descendants and have no connection to modern humans, and on top of that, you seem to be arguing that Christians independently invented ideas like don't murder people for fun, having never heard of such a thing before.
Western nations are based and predicated on judeo-christian type values.
That's all well and good, but it's not really your idea.
I'm sorry, but there is absolutely no reason to believe that this is an independent idea cooked up by Christians.
In fact, as a Christian or as someone that believes in God, you would believe that God, who created the universe, exists long before the idea of Christianity as a religion or organized religion even appeared or came to be a thing because, well, God created the universe. So it really doesn't matter whether or not the point in time in which Christianity was established as religion, because God has always existed. And with God always existing, good and evil, at least the intrinsic knowledge of good and evil has always existed in human beings because Adam and Eve ate from the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So as a Christian, you would already have the understanding that morality, or as a thing, has expanded between the baser understanding or spirit or core of human beings because God has always been a factor. God, the knowledge of good and evil, has always been a factor intrinsic to humans since the inception of humanity.
Wait. So then, what did Christianity actually do? This is exactly my point. These are not Christian values, they are human values. In fact, this was one of the core points in my video, Jordan Peterson's Sloppy Morality. Even if you believe that God created these innate, universal human values, that doesn't make them Christian values any more than it makes this rock a Christian rock. Christianity, the religion, is not responsible for giving us either of these things.
Well, my work is done here.
What do you mean your work is done? You didn't do anything.
Didn't I?
The point of bringing this up is to say that it really doesn't matter if you can establish that there are similar laws between Christianity or similar values between Christianity and other religions, because as a Christian, you would already understand, or if you argue with a Christian, they would already understand that humans intrinsically already have the knowledge of good and evil inside of them.
So in what possible sense are these Christian values?
They would already understand that humans intrinsically already have the knowledge of good and evil inside of them. However, the interesting thing that you're going to have to do here to prove that Western civilization is not based on moral Christian moral guidelines is to link, one, that the framework of our values are not predicated on Christianity, and two, you'd have to link it to something else, which you haven't done here.
Well, based on everything you've said so far, I'm not the one who has to prove that Western civilizations aren't based on Christianity. You're the one who has yet to prove that Western civilizations are based on Christianity. And you've already done a lot to demonstrate that they aren't. So, I'm sorry, what do you expect anyone to do at this point except to laugh? You're kind of all over the place. And in terms of linking these values to something else, you've already done that for me. It's human nature.
The intrinsic knowledge of good and evil has always existed in human beings.
I'm sorry, but how many feet can you shoot yourself in?
In fact, I could very easily link why people think that our civilization is based on Christian guidelines. And that's because most of the people that have existed in America, if you want to ignore the Native Americans, but most of the people who exist, at least now, and have existed 50, 200 years ago, have been Christians. In fact, the first settlers that came here were pilgrims who wanted to practice religious freedom.
Ooh, religious freedom, you say? You know, I don't really see that in the Bible. Well, how about democracy? Nope. Freedom of speech? Nope. Capitalism? Huh. Well, what about not murdering people for fun? Ah, yep, it's in there. And, well, it's also in pretty much every human civilization ever. Okay, so yeah, our founders were Christians, and that seems to be almost entirely irrelevant to the society they actually built. Just because they called these values Christian values, that doesn't mean Christianity is responsible for their existence, any more than you could say that these are Venaloid values, which is technically true. Therefore, I deserve all the credit?
I'm getting an idea. What if Fry was supposed to get frozen?
Yes, shove him in the tube. It was my idea.
So unless you can try to explain to me how, as a group of Christians, their morality is not somehow based in Christianity, I think that kind of ends the argument there.
You yourself have already argued that moral values like not killing each other ultimately come from human nature. So, you're right, the argument is over, and you've scored on your own goal. Now, this video I'm responding to is 35 minutes long in total, so because I don't want my video to be a full hour long, and because I've pretty much said everything I want to, I'm going to leave it here. Thanks for watching.